Hello everyone, Benton RP here. I decided to make a video, and this one is concerning what has happened to Star Wars to have it come to this. The fan base has had to fight the owners of the Star Wars franchise. I was listening to a YouTuber. His name is The Gospel According to Mark with a C, and he is another lifelong Star Wars fan, someone who followed Star Wars from the very beginning and knows the origins of the lore, and understands that Disney took their own take on it and that it's contradictory to what the original Star Wars really was. And after so many people who, like you who are out there, they start to really understand that they can't have a blockbuster movie-going experience like they did unless they take it as light popcorn fluff without any deep meaning, or admit that it doesn't have the deep meaning that a Star Wars movie always carries as its theme. Something to believe in, a good story to tell. You can't really go and celebrate the opening days of these movies as a blockbuster because it hurts your head trying to fit one person's writing and another person's reality of the writing into the same universe. So it's 10 days after Solo's been out in theaters. Solo's bombed. It's official. It's bombed. And that's what happens when it's all spectacle but nothing beyond the fluff. So I wondered, how did it come to this? And that's what this video is going to be. My theory on explaining the approach that Disney took, why they fought the fans. You might have your own take on this, but I hope you leave a comment about it so that I could learn what pieces in this puzzle there are to be put together. So, Disney bought Lucasfilm back in 2014. I left a big comment on Gospel of Mark with a C, according to Mark with a C, because that video really started to make me wonder after he said, congratulations for getting Disney's attention, putting the message out. And it's like, how did it come to this? And here's what I think Disney did. If you've been following the situation, this video is going to make sense to you. Disney's PR campaign, their reaction to The Last Jedi, the press statements that they put out, it's not going to make sense to you if you've so much stayed away from that and so much agree with Disney. This is for people who have argued against Disney that Star Wars has really taken a turn out of its boundaries and out of the realm of fandom, according to them as a fan. So I said that Episode 9 has no chance of being a great film being this deep into the trilogy of the Disney trilogy. And it's interesting how the new owners of the Star Wars brand trapped themselves in this. I think that they're in too deep no matter whether they listen to the fans or change course, and I'll explain why. But if you agree with me, then isn't it just fascinating how Star Wars might not be able to make money? Disney, with all its finances and resources and skill, plus Star Wars, equals unable to make money. How did it come to this? Here's my theory. That's what this video is about. The people versus Disney, the fans, Disney versus the fans. I think that they could have made a lot of money if they started with good stories first. They could have started instead by ordering J.J. Abrams to, not with a good story, but to make as big of a splash as he possibly could with the first movie. That's where they seem to have started from. Make as big of a splash, make it as big of a blockbuster, since it's our first movie. Now, how is J.J. Abrams going to do that? Would it be better to approach it with inspired storytelling? Receive inspiration from the higher powers and translate that inspiration into a cinematic experience. Well, you need inspiration from fate. It's much easier to do that with trickery. If you're on a budget and you have a time schedule and you're working at a job where you have a boss. Disney is his boss at this moment. So, he kind of rode the line between, okay, not upsetting the lore, while at the same time appeasing Disney's values and interests. They wanted a blockbuster. I can ride that line and give it to them. Easy, the fans want that too, so we'll work out a mutual middle ground. They want more representation of other ethnicities. Okay, middle ground there, we'll appease the fans. They want feminism in their movies. I can find a middle ground. We'll have to get rid of the expanded universe. But shock and awe will make it so darn brilliant that they can't resist wondering and seeing what the Star Wars movie is about. I think he succeeded in that so well, and Disney got their blockbuster so affirmatively, that Disney probably felt, oh, these fans aren't so difficult after all. We don't need to understand their Star Wars after all. Or even answer any of the open questions that J.J. Abrams set up. They loved it. As a movie, they didn't need closure. J.J. Abrams isn't known for his closure. In some of his TV shows and some of his movies, he's kind of known as a setup guy who sets up a mystery box. And to me, he's kind of a person who knows how to make a success and turn something into a blockbuster because of that. So Disney, not taking any of this into account, probably felt they could now push what they always do, their values, similar to the values push that they do with their animated brands. Their sociological agenda can now, they could now instill it. The Disney formula. That's what Disney does. And they knew, probably through research, that there are diehard fans out there who would criticize future movies, because once the hype is gone, of course, then they always come up as history is proven. Red Letter Media made a really great video explaining the prequels back in the early 2000s. And they probably didn't care about these diehard fans' criticism because they studied it and took the clue that some of these Star Wars fans are going to complain no matter what. So there's nothing we can do about some of these fans. And that's probably where their growth of their apathy or their neglect for fans' criticism came from. That their history has proven that some Star Wars fans are always going to passionately complain. But they probably thought we could always buffer this by partnering with the media on Disney's behalf to relieve any tensions to the reputation that detracting fans could possibly tarnish our reputations with. Anything that they could produce, we could produce stronger. So when the fans complained about the next movie, which was very Disney agenda-driven, Disney knew not to listen. Of course they should have, but this is their approach that I'm explaining here, that I'm hypothesizing, theorizing on. They already had a predetermination not to listen because they knew that they had this media campaign and that it was time to start it in full flight. And when that wasn't working, when the fans had legitimate complaints about the rules in the universe that were broken with The Last Jedi, and we're talking about the fans who know and memorize Star Wars, not the fans who like The Last Jedi for the good things in it, you know. I hope that I'm not upsetting a lot of fans who liked it when I say this, but you probably thought that there were a lot of Star Wars things in there that made sense, and when you ask a real diehard Star Wars fan, or a lifelong Star Wars fan as I call it, they could tell you that it was not only nonsensical to the Star Wars universe, but quite insulting of it. So there might have been some animosity on Disney's part towards the franchise that they're handling. How there's so many people who love it, and they just didn't want to continue down that path since it didn't fit the ideals of their own agenda. So mocking it a little bit was something prevalent in The Last Jedi. Luke throwing the lightsaber out, his character being completely dismissed as a moral character, the way that he was grown into in the entire original trilogy. So when that wasn't working and fans were still detracting, they might have just tried to be more earnest and honest about what they believe, which is not good. They went back to how their agenda, it should not be tampered with. It would be immoral to tamper with because they believe in this agenda, socio-political agenda, the feminism, the racial equality, the gender equality, the sexual equality, environment, left-wing ideals, because if you know the Hollywood bubble, they're very left-leaning, and they call them Hollyweird, and there's a lot of pretension in a lot of these events and ceremonies that they have. You can see it in the Oscars, even though I don't watch that. It's always like that. It's just the way they are. That's what they really believe. You can tell. So they're very passionate about people tampering with this agenda. They say that it's morally correct as an agenda in their minds. And they went out and they actually attacked the fans by saying that, this is something we really believe in. Of course, they put the Star Wars label in it. They're the rightful owners. And now you have people passionate about Star Wars, the original fans, and Disney passionate about what they call Star Wars. Both people passionate about the same thing, Star Wars, not agreeing with each other at all, fighting each other. They probably felt that these growing, detracting fans who aren't going along with the media's 98% on Rotten Tomatoes, and then down to 97%, I believe, and then down to 91%, weren't going along with it, driving the score down, starting their audience score at 50-something percent and bringing it down to 47%, 46%, I think. Way different from a 91%. They probably thought that they're getting out of control. And we need a soundbite message to Lucasfilm, to all of their representatives, to detract these fans. An easy to remember soundbite that will cancel the argument and desist it or quash it in the quickest way. Calling hatred towards the Last Jedi movie racist and calling the hatred towards the Last Jedi movie sexist is the easiest to remember soundbite to mandate to all of the representatives that have to argue back. And it's something that they believe in. It's something that is easy for people to get in their circle of influence. We made a pro-feminism movie. We made a racially diverse movie, so it is racist and sexist not to like it. That's their message. In their minds, that seemed to make sense. But what the fans were arguing, of course, were story details that Disney themselves did not understand. And the more we explain it to them, the less it made sense to them because, like I said, J.J. Abrams showed them that, hey, it is possible to get these fans on board. And why isn't it working when we put our good-hearted ideals into it? They must be sexist and racist. They probably had no idea that the lore was being subtracted by J.J. Abrams here and there in order to appease Disney, while still, through the magic of his talent, bringing the fans on board for a temporary moment of time by making sure that they don't question these things too much, by leaving it open-ended and not concluding or answering these things, that the combination of what Disney wants and what the fans want just made unanswerable. So he just left it there. And, Disney probably felt like they had a good beat on the Star Wars franchise, on the brand, and they could do it themselves. So they kept on continuing to argue what they believe in, aggressively, a lot of the times. A lot of racial blaming, a lot of anti-feminist blaming, alt-right, Russian trolls, Russian bots. That's what you guys are. They probably really believe this because they didn't understand why the backlash was so big for something that they were so successful with, even though it was something that they didn't understand. So now that they are proven to not understand it, the fans have shown them by not being inspired or motivated to go to the theater, their pocketbooks are affected. And when a business's pocketbook is affected, they know the plan completely failed. You can be a bad company and insult your customers, but if your pocketbook is affected and you don't know your plan failed, you're not a bad company. You're a company that's no longer going to exist. So they know the plan failed because the money's not coming in. This is where I offer no solution to Disney, because that what I just explained is a hole dug in for them so deep. They're now going to have to look back to realize what they did with all the plot holes in The Last Jedi. The things that the people who like The Last Jedi don't want to look at, And now I kind of feel bad for the people who like The Last Jedi, because now Disney's going to have to look at all the storyline incongruities there in order to simply point themselves in the right direction. They littered the Star Wars storyline with incongruities, with setups with no payoffs, plot devices, poor character development or poor character arcs, things that didn't make sense, insults. And now the fans who like The Last Jedi might have to be exposed to some of the cleanup and might have to admit that, yeah, I didn't understand Star Wars, because now Disney will have to clean it up, what they littered in the Star Wars franchise, if they are to point themselves in the right direction. Who knows if they will? Howbeit, even if they point themselves in the right direction by looking at all the plot holes they created, there's no fixing how big the flaws are until they remove that entire movie from the franchise completely. It's just too much of an insult to what Star Wars stands for. And I'm not saying the feminism is an insult to what Star Wars stands for. Actually, the racial equality and feminism in it is the most in line with Star Wars, but Star Wars, the original trilogy, did it better. The Last Jedi is kind of like a fluff, lecturing message about equality and feminism, and not really an inspiring story about it, the way that the original ones were. Now the problem is that even if they acknowledge that The Last Jedi has a lot of flaws, there's just no chance for a good third movie unless they remove The Last Jedi from canon. I hate to say it, but if the first movie in the trilogy doesn't make sense anymore because J.J. Abrams and all of the mystery box, open-ended plot devices or plot lines or storylines being unfulfilled or unanswered, and the second movie trashing them, along with a little bit of trash here on the main characters and what Star Wars stands for and represents, or what Star Wars universe is like. There's no chance for a good first and second movie in the entire trilogy, and the whole trilogy would then rest on the third movie. And even if the third were great, while simultaneously correcting and apologizing for the two movies that came before it, doing that appropriately and being great, like a real masterpiece, you would have a defective trilogy of two bad movies and one good movie. You could never convince someone that Disney, Star Wars, is something you should be fanatical about because, you know, they made two bad movies and you're going to sit through them, and then the third one is going to be the first good movie. It's just not going to happen. People are going to say, well, it doesn't sound good to me. Sounds like you should just show me the third good one and just admit that they messed up on the first and second one of their trilogy, that they got a score of 1 out of 3 on the trilogy that they produced. It's not going to be good, you know. People don't want to wait 2 hours and finish a bad movie only to start another bad movie and watch it for 2 hours just to get some payoff. You make the good movie first. That's your credentials. That's where you prove yourself. And the way that Disney proved themselves on the first two movies, it's always going to be bad if they don't change it. They've made a mess unlike any that I have ever seen. They would have to take back The Last Jedi at the very least. And that's never been done before, to remove a blockbuster from canon, or to remove a blockbuster that was successful in the theaters from a movie's franchise, its chapters, in its history. That's a big mess, especially considering how perfect a current revival of Star Wars, using Disney's finances at this moment, could have been. Star Wars is something that I explained in my first video, so removed from modern day topical socio-political agendas and troubles and issues being set so long ago and in space far, far away, that they could have done it. They could have for once escaped the shackles of having to incorporate a beloved legendary franchise into the modern world. But I think incorporating it into modern issues is the first thing that Disney did, which is a shame. And that's what I wanted to explain, is that this is a mess that I'm wondering how they could clean up. Because of all the things I described, it seems like this brand, I'm wondering how it's going to make any money in the future unless they revoke The Last Jedi. And unless they do revoke Episode 8, The Last Jedi, it seems like Disney and Star Wars together would just equal an equation that would be unable to make any money. they could trick people into seeing episode 9 by making it so different. But that would still just be a trick. And so many fans feel tricked already, rightfully so, that it would only work on a handful of people, less than the amount of people that they got into the audience for The Last Jedi. And that doesn't equal a lot of money. So, are they going to revoke The Last Jedi? Probably not. So how are they going to make money? That's what I wanted to bring to topic. Oh, by the way, that's the end of my video because I have no answer. This doesn't have a conclusion or a happy ending. I just wanted to explain that the state of Star Wars is pretty dire, in my opinion. You may disagree. I'd like to hear your counter arguments below in the comments. Thank you for listening. I was going to say something. I wanted to close it out by saying that I wonder where the franchise is going, and I would like to hear your thoughts on it. Whether it seems like they have no options to make money if they don't do some drastic things with the lore and revocation of things that they did, actions that they just took less than a year ago. That's my analysis on the situation, and that's my report. I hope that you got something out of it. Thank you for watching, and thank you for listening to me rant about this. I hope it was beneficial to you. I wonder where it's going to go, and I hope that we get somewhere where we get some good payoff from this as Star Wars fans. And hope you're doing well. Take care.